There we go. Everyone was here on time, ladies and gentlemen, but I purposely delayed backstage so that we would start late, because that's how we rock here in the Empire. So, welcome back, everybody. I'm Alan from the Library of Alexandria, and today you'll note that it is not Pete, Evie, and Anitha, which are apparently the only three people I talked to. Instead, we jettisoned Anitha. We're like, you know what? We've done some focus groups, and Anitha not playing well with the 18 to 35 crowd, so we've jettisoned her. We brought on some new cast members. Samwise here, and Evie got canceled, so she actually was fired from the show. Not me; it was the producers. So apologies. So we've replaced them with Sam here and Nuclear Katie. Pete is still here. Pete is a Clacker sympathizer.
Wild. It is wild that I'm still here and they are gone.
Hanging by a thread.
Look, I can't wait to listen to this. To Pete's just Clacker sympathizing.
Roger.
Yeah. So anyway, everyone knows who Pete is, but Sam and Katie, y'all should introduce yourself. Sam.
All right. Yeah. My name's Sam. My YouTube channel is my YouTube channel is Samwise. I'm pretty new to YouTube or to BookTube. Been on for about 6-7 months, something like that. And I don't know. I read a lot of stuff, but only talk about a small sliver of it, which it tends to mostly be Gene Wolfe, Stephen Wahed, and Mark Lawrence so far. But hopefully Ian Tregillis and more than that now. So and I really like this book, and thank you guys for letting me be a part of the read along. And
Sam has great reviews, so y'all check out his channel, and it's linked down in the description. So check out his channel, and yes, good reviews. It's true. Katie.
Hi everyone, I'm YouTubeless Katie. I don't have a channel or anything, but I try to hang around the community some, and I read all things fantasy. And other than that, I'm kind of busy with being in grad school as the nuclear name. So I'm a nuclear engineer, so I'm a little busy with that. But apart from that, I love to read, working on Malazan and a couple other things right now. So
crazy nuclear engineer. That's so awesome. So awesome. I met Katie at my National Latin Convention because it was at her college over the summer. And
in the flesh.
And we talked about nuclear stuff and how you are not a huge fan of the salt ones.
Not.
Yeah.
So
it's fascinating. I know very little, but it's all
me neither. But you know.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about. I literally had it in my hand, like standby. Oh, it's under this. There we go. We're gonna talk about the Mechanical, book 1 in the Alchemy Wars trilogy by Ian Tregillis. So if you do not know what this book is about, ladies and gentlemen, this book is like it's not really even a fantasy. It's like an alternate history where Huygens, who apparently is a very famous Dutch scientist, who discovered alchemy, discovered the key to alchemy, but instead of turning lead into gold, he discovered how to animate these clockwork beings called clackers. I'm so sorry that my child is having a fit for no reason. Atticus, what is your problem?
He's showing support for the clackers, is what he's doing.
No, he's not.
That's right.
Oh my God.
Exactly. He's building his own. He's speaking in the clacker language.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, Christina, is it possible to mollify him? Anyway, so because of this, the Dutch have basically conquered Europe, and it's actually the Catholics that had to flee.
The Dutch Protestants.
Persecution. Yeah, they have fled to the New World. Because the Protestants have taken over all of Europe, and so the Catholics basically exist in the New World. But the Dutch have New Amsterdam and stuff, so the Catholics they have Marseille in the west, and Quebec. That's what they have. And so the Dutch have conquered everything by the use of clackers, which are metalmen that do all the work and fight the wars. But I think it's cool because the French fight back with also alchemy, but chemistry alchemy, where they make epoxy grenades and sprays and stuff, because the only way to stop the clackers is to spray them down with fast hardening resin. I picture it like the 3D printer goop that they just spray them with and it hardens really quickly.
I think it's Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, the spray on shoes.
I ain't seen that movie.
I pictured as like actual epoxy, like the 2-part, you know, like what.
I mean, that's what it is, but not having seen epoxy a lot in my life, I was having trouble picturing it. So I'm like,
fair enough.
What if it's melted 3D printer resin?
I don't think that stuff would work, but you know.
I'm not much of a visual reader, so I didn't picture it.
Yeah, it's goo. It's a goo of some sort. They spray them with a goo of some sort that freezes them, and they can't do anything. And so yeah, the clackers must obey their human masters through use of geases. So what I learned is the actual pronunciation of geas is gesh.
No,
I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say
no.
geas. And the plural of geas is not geases. It's giesa. It's giesa.
No.
Is plural.
That's not how I read
It's
that
not.
at all.
It's not at all. That is fake news.
So well, I mean, that means that the plural is geisha, which is something else. But anyway, so they are under their main meta-geas is they can't harm humans, and they have to like. Oh, and the big meta-geas is that if there's ever see a rogue clacker, like one that's gained sentience or gained free will or whatever, they have to hunt it down. Like everything becomes subject to that.
They have to scream first.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They have to scream like some kind of magical aided klaxon noise, like
which doesn't make sense to me to a certain extent, because you are more than likely, if you have a rogue clacker, you're going to be in a Dutch city or Dutch occupied city. So you are hindering the humans from helping you with the klaxon.
Yes, but they have to let all the other clackers know. But yes, you're right. Anyway, so I really enjoyed this book. I had no idea what to expect. I have literally never heard. I've been on BookTube for almost 5 years, and I have never heard anybody talk about this book ever. And this book was on one of my first TBRs when I joined BookTube, and I just never read it.
Well, that's the problem. It was on one of your TBRs, so nobody read it.
That's why I don't talk about it, because I mentioned it 5 years ago. But yes, Charmaine is here. Charmaine also liked it. But I really liked this book. I didn't know what to expect. I knew it was some kind of alternate history, but I actually really enjoyed it. So we'll start with you, Sam, and y'all just give your non-spoiler kind of thoughts about the book. Sam?
Yeah. I also had not heard of this before. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. I'll say Tregillis's writing style took me a little bit to get into. I don't know if I'd call it dry necessarily, but very odd. And I don't know that it's uneven. I think it's just how he writes, but he'd have these very specific modern sounding turns of phrase. And then, a paragraph later have a word that, I don't know. I need to look up if I needed to find a definition of it. But overall, I mean, I found the plot really well written. I really like the character of Visser in this book, who is a Catholic priest who is undercover as a Protestant pastor over in Europe. And the way that his plot evolves was probably my favorite of the story. And I don't know, hopefully I'm not one of these fart sniffing type of YouTubers who is all about, but the themes, I've expanded my mind. But I do really like talking about different themes in the books that I read. And I found this book to be extraordinarily interesting in combining themes that were very applicable to the story that was being told. Not just here's something random but the setting of the Protestants and Catholics overseas with this question of free will. It's oh my gosh, this is one of the central debates in the real world with this ideology. And I also was surprised how much of this book felt like almost a horror novel. The whole clacker side of things reminded me a lot of Frankenstein and a lot of the questions raised there. And with one specific plot line later in the story, it almost got into a demon possession, almost is how it felt like. A type of novel, which is funny because I read The Exorcist shortly after that, and I'm oh, this is reminding me of things in The Mechanical. So overall, and for people who don't read horror, it's not scary in that sense as much as it is similar ideas and tropes. So anyway, all that to say, I really enjoyed this book, and that's it.
Melissa, I agree. There were words in this that I didn't know. I looked up several words that he
There were a
used, and not just Dutch ones. Like I looked up all the Dutch ones, but he also used vocab I didn't know. Don't worry, Sam. I have a ton of fart sniffing friends, like Joanna, Philip. They literally walk into all kinds of gaseous food restaurants and just like stand there sniffing the air because they love it.
No cockroaches in the book.
Oh my gosh. The thematic stuff in here I really liked, like the stuff about free will. I thought it was done really well and in a different way than we normally see, because I mean that's not that itself is not a theme that we don't see all the time, especially when you're dealing with robots. But yeah, I thought it was real good. But yes, I completely agree. Some of this took core elements. It had some really interesting discussions about free will, not just with the clackers, but free will among the humans. Like, do they have free will? Does God grant them free will the same way as do the humans? Do the clackers have free will? Super interesting. Katie, what'd you think?
I also really loved this book. I feel like to me it was a very layered novel. Like there was more than one part that I really enjoyed. Like you were talking about before, I really did enjoy the thematic aspect and the whole free will discussion. And I feel like a lot of times in books when we have a theme presented very strongly like that, like it wasn't really hidden in the pages. There were some explicit discussions about free will, but one thing I really appreciated that the author did here was he gave both sides of the coin. Like I don't really know what side he would argue if he were sitting in that chair, because he so very well gave both sides of the story and looked at it from multiple angles. And I just thought that was really, really well done from a writing perspective. And apart from that, the alternate history was very interesting to me. There were, because we have the Dutch as the ruling people and the French leaving and the Catholics kicked out, it kind of started a chain of events of several like technological developments that happened differently, and I thought that was super interesting. For example, in this book, they didn't have the steam engine wasn't developed, and so because of that, there were several technological things that kind of fell along down the line and had impacts, and it just felt, the alternate history felt really well thought out, there's probably a couple plot holes in there somewhere, but overall there was a lot to bite down on, I felt like, and some really interesting stuff from the alternate history. And other than that, I really loved the writing, the prose. For me, when a book has really, I wouldn't quite call it purple, but I would say it borders that line. When a book has a little bit more purple prose, if it's done well, like I'm in, and I loved that here. I thought it was really descriptive and really evocative of some certain elements that I wouldn't have thought of in certain ways, and I really enjoyed his writing. So
yeah, I agree. It was evocative and descriptive without bogging me down. Like I never really got bogged down by it, which was good. And like, in what world are the Dutch like the rulers of the world? Like what? I mean, but yeah, I thought it was super interesting that they know about steam and electricity, but they discarded steam as an idea
because it wasn't they couldn't weaponize it.
Correct. So I love, and this is in Shadow of the Apt, how warfare is what creates technological leaps forward, and I love that theme. And so I like, it's just so interesting that they've discarded steam power, because like we can't weaponize that, and the only uses of electricity that they're playing with are weaponized electricity. Like and it's because it's all such everything has to be in service of countering the Dutch clackers, which is just super interesting. And then you don't need, and then the Dutch don't need anything because everything's clacker power. Like they don't need alternate sources of energy. The clackers pull everything. They don't need motor cars because the clackers pull it. They don't need advanced like steamships because the clackers will row forever.
The clackers light the street lamps at night, all that kind of stuff.
Like
the snapping to spark it off. That was that was a really nice. I like that touch.
I agree with Anita. Tulips, calling the Dutch tulips is fantastic. Just such good, like slurs, calling the Dutch tulips. But yeah, it's good. Like I really like some of the stuff that's in this. All right, Pete, go ahead. Oh, hold on. There are 3 characters in this. I forgot to say this at the beginning. There's Visser, who is the Catholic priest who is in the Netherlands, just like undercover, like working for the French and the Catholics, but undercover. Then you have Jax, who is our resident clacker, and then you have Berenice, who I'm going to be the only one out here defending Berenice.
I liked her too.
Thank goodness. Berenice is the French. She is like the French spy master who is under. Yeah. She is running undercover rings of spies in. She's in the New World, but runs undercover spies in the Netherlands, and I love her. Like I love spycraft in general, or tradecraft as they call it. And I thought she's an interesting character because she is a French patriot, and she is going to do whatever it takes to throw the Dutch.
She did some terrible things, but I understand why she did them. Like I got it, and I was like,
absolutely. She does some things that are just hard to swallow. Like especially if you think one way or the other, and it's just like, but you do understand. Like even if you don't agree, it's like okay, well, I mean I get it. Like I
get it, yeah.
Well, consistent with her worldview, as it were.
Yeah, she was not wishy-washy at all. Like it was, I like the opposite. Yeah, she is committed to the cause. Yes, that is honestly the most fantastic part that the French have not, have a chemical white flag so they can shoot from their guns. Go ahead, Pete. Now, you're the resident clacker sympathist.
Clacker stan. Yeah, that's me.
So go ahead.
So as you guys can see by my name, I routinely got the word clacker confused with clanker from Star Wars, which is a slur for the droids.
Oh, is it really? I didn't know.
Yeah, it's a slur. I was laughing every time I did. Anyways, so I love this book. Was really good about like the discussions of free will and the clackers, specifically Jax. I love that storyline. I didn't hate Bernice or Vizier, but like clacker was the standout for me. I liked, like, again, you guys have said about Bernice, like she's very unapologetic about her actions, which was really interesting. Just like seeing a little bit into her mind during her perspectives of just like what we got of just, her calculations that she was doing. And then I have there's more thoughts that I can't talk about, spoilers. And then Jax in particular and the clacker society that's kind of like right under the skin of the Dutch society was really fascinating. And I want to see more of that and kind of like the detailing out the logic of the Giases, the Giasai, Giasai.
Just say Giases like a regular person.
Giases, the almost like programmer logic of the Giases.
Yes.
And clackers having to like mentally think about that in a split second when they start conflicting and all that jazz was so cool. And I almost want like another clacker POV as well in the next one, but just more clacker stuff. And then Vizier was great. Like I love the very specific Catholic versus Protestant among other things, like discussions and like his whole storyline just it was great. I also thought that Tregillis had some really interesting turns of phrase that like I'm like, like there was one, it was like in the first 2 chapters that was like, I'm not allowed to pick the lock on my own soul, that I was like, oh, I'm here for it. They're like, some of it was edgy, some of it was just like beautiful in its own way, but he just had such an interesting turn of phrase in some places.
Stop before I get my coffee. Hold on.
Sorry. So yeah, Anita's asking if I sympathize with wristwatches too. No.
Yes, Anita out here representing Anastasia Bell. Yes, that's such a great discussion. So this book, for anybody who hasn't read it, we're gonna talk spoilers here in just a minute. The fact that Berenice made me sympathize with the French, which has never happened ever. Berenice and Longchamps. I love Longchamps. That's great. There's a lot of discussion about free will and the soul, and like because the French are looking for an opportunity to study. The book opens where the French have just recently repelled an invasion. Like there's peace between the French and the Dutch temporarily after the last attempt to take Marseille in the West.
Which is a wild place to start.
Yeah. And so
anybody else would have started at the battle.
Yeah. The French want to dismantle and basically reverse engineer a clacker. But if they're caught doing it, it's basically a declaration of war. And then the peace treaty is over. So, but they desperately want to study that because they know that they're on borrowed time, that eventually the Dutch are just going to overwhelm them. And the big thing is the Dutch are building a grand forge, which is this massive underground place where they make the clackers. In the New World, where the French are, there aren't a bunch of clackers. They're everywhere in Europe. Because they're made in the Netherlands and everyone has one. They're just ubiquitous. So they are in the New World, but they are much less populous, which is another reason that they weren't able to take over Marseille in the West. But the construction of another forge on the New World will change all of that. And so the French are trying to prepare for the invasion that's definitely going to come as soon as that forge is done and clackers are mass produced. So it's just quite good. But it's also about, are any human if the French got control of the Dutch's clackers, would they be any better as masters than the Dutch? Should the clackers have masters at all? And it's a really nuanced discussion. It's not just clear cut. And I think one of the most interesting discussions in the book is between the priest and a member of the clockmakers guild, the horologists, the people that are in charge of making the clackers, because that's where a lot of this discussion about the soul and free will comes. And it's pretty good. It's super good. I will tell you guys, because all predictions are going to have to be left to them, because I'm halfway through the second book on accident. Do not read the first page of the book that has a little snippet of what elsewhere in the book. It is literally the end of. It's literally the end of part one. It will spoil the end of part one. Don't read it. Do not read it.
Man. All right.
Seriously, it's the end of chapter 11. I'm like, why is this the little blurb they give you? Just skip it. Because it is the end of part one. Don't read it.
It's like early 2000s inner flap marketing.
It's just weird.
I was gonna say that. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Alan, you're talking about nobody's ever heard of this. I think that maybe one of the problems is just the marketing behind this book. I'm not saying this is the worst cover I've ever seen, but you look on the back, it's literally a Shutterstock image, that was put on as the cover here, and there's no description on the back.
There's no blurb on the back.
Description. And
I know.
This to me smells of what I'm a big fan of the author Matthew Stover, and one of the things that people will say about Heroes Die by Stover is that the reason why it has such an awful cover is the marketers are just we don't know what this is, we don't know how to market this, so just what. And this kind of looked like that to me, where it's it's fantasy, but it's not, but it's not really historical fiction, and here. So that makes sense to me why I'd never heard of this before, even though it's really good.
Yeah, to me it's more alternate history and steampunk than anything else. But I love it, and I love Heroes Die, but I hate Blade of Tishal. Despise it. I despise everything about it.
And
my baby was upset because he had pooped his pants. Oh, well, now he's upset anyway. All right, well, he's just gonna be mad then. Oh my gosh, get over yourself, baby. All right, so we are going to start delving into some spoilers here. So if you have not read it and plan on reading it ever, you should go. If you don't care, then feel free to stay. So that is your last warning before we we start talking about it. So chat, those of you who read it, who was y'all's favorite character in the book? We got a Jax. Melissa liked Jax the best.
Charmaine is Jax. You already know it.
Berenice is a great spy, but an enemy to clackers. Get out of here. False. That's wrong, Charmaine. That's wrong. That's wrong. Berenice is a friend of clackers everywhere.
Is she?
Yeah.
I mean,
look,
would she enslave them if given the
look? Lilith donated her body to science, and
sure.
Lilith was told that she was donating her body to science, and it is for the greater good.
I do not think Lilith's driver's license had the organ donor box check.
I mean,
actually.
It's kind of like, why do we know so much about the human body today? Like,
see, people donated their body to science, and Lilith.
She wasn't an organ donor. Can't touch it.
We couldn't find the driver's license, so we just assumed. Like, we just couldn't find it. And so, I mean, look, that it is a credit to Tregillis that, you know, like, Lilith is a clacker. She's a robot, right? Mm-hmm. And it is unnerving how violating it feels on what Berenice is doing. Like epoxying her to the wall and forcefully dissecting her. Like, after, and it's not just they surprised her and did it. They surprised her. She begged them not to, and Berenice did it anyway. Mm-hmm. And it is uncomfortable. Like, I'm uncomfortable with what Berenice is doing now. I'm on Berenice's side, but still, I'm still like, I don't love this.
It's one of those examples of like putting your morals in the moment aside for what is effectively, hopefully, the greater good. You know, in order to do anything about the clackers, they have to understand them, and Bernice is trying to aid that goal, even if the way she goes about it maybe isn't morally sound.
No, Belgium, you're an organ donor unless you say otherwise.
Well, is New France in Belgium? No, it's in the New World, US of Canada.
Hey, maybe Belgium's in the New World too. We don't know.
Yeah, it's close.
Belgium's gone. Belgium has been erased off the planet. Sorry.
So, but consensual experiments done on slaves, medical advancements may have never. Well, Charmaine, now you're making it real, and now we can't just keep it in the context of the robots. Charmaine, all right. Well, I mean, yeah, that's terrible. Like, what Charmaine said is awful, like, objectively awful.
Oh, fully.
But no. I assumed you meant non-consensual. Yes, it does remind me of that, except that Lilith is a robot, and so I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't be. I shouldn't be because, like,
I don't sympathize with the watch.
Yeah, it's just, it makes me feel all kinds of like complex thoughts because, like, they're not humans, and I like the robots, but like,
they don't vote.
You know, well, I think part of it too is like the robot at the end of the day is a mechanical device. Whether or not it has a soul, whether or not it has free will, it can be put back together without harm.
Thank you.
Humans cannot.
Like, Katie, you and I, we're on the same page there. Like,
I'm with you.
I agree. You can't dismantle a human and then put it back the way you found it.
Yeah.
Now, does that make any less violent?
Even if you could, would that make it right?
Yeah. Literally later in the book, that's exactly what they did to Vizier.
Yes.
I would argue it's a little bit different because they weren't trying to understand Vizier. They were just trying to make him a tool. So I'm not saying what Bernice did is right.
There's definitely like a moral difference between what Bernice did and what Vizier did because there's completely different purposes.
Yeah.
The intent behind Vizier's was harm, whereas Bernice did not intend Lilith harm, I don't think.
Yeah, but Berenice is not trying to, like, I believe Berenice had every intention to restore Lilith to her pre-violation state. I mean, the violation stays, but Berenice views it as you will have no lasting physical effects from this. Right. And again, like, Berenice is a human, and the clackers are robots. Like, they are tools to most humans. And so she is viewing Lilith as just an autonomous machine. Like, she does not consider Lilith a human. I don't even think she not human, but I don't even think she considers Jax like on the same level as a kid.
I think she's getting there though. I think
Yeah,
that there were a few thoughts that like were percolating in her mind.
Well, the interesting thing with her is like by the end of the book, she is obviously like no longer really working for France. So it's kind of like at that point, okay, we know that she doesn't fully sympathize with the Clackers. So what is her driving force? Who is she fighting this war for? Because she's still, head first trying to have an impact on the war. So who is she fighting for?
And at the end, she does not dismantle Jax. She does not dismantle Jax's neck cord, like without it. Like she gets his permission. Like she says, Jax, we have to do this.
Right.
Like, can I dismantle you? Rather than, I mean, she doesn't have any epoxy grenades, I don't think, at that point. No, yes, she does, because she uses one on Montmartre. But yeah, Sam, what are your thoughts on the scene with Berenice and Lilith?
Well, I think like a part of it, what came to mind for me when reading it, I think the reason why we have such a stronger reaction to it is because we have Jax's point of view earlier in the book, but the similar scene that comes to mind is in 2001, the Kubrick movie, when they're dismantling, spoilers if you haven't watched 2001 A Space Odyssey, but when they're dismantling Hal, the robot, and like Hal has a very monotone voice, but is like begging for him to stop. But because we just always see Hal as a robot, we never see inside of his mind. We never like nobody watches that movie and feels bad for Hal, during that scene. It might be like uncanny, but like nobody's like, oh, the poor, and
that's because he's the bad guy.
Like I'm kind of two minds about it, because it's like, well, like obviously it's the question of the soul with the Clacker. Like that's what I'm really interested in, because it's like, well, obviously, like you watch something like Star Wars and C-3PO and R2-D2 are fun robots, but they don't have souls, not in the same way that Yoda, Chewbacca, and the human characters do. So I'm hoping that gets explored or explained in later books, because at first I was just like, well, like, do they just take humans and like turn them somehow alchemically, magically, like turn them into something else, or what gives one of these robotic things a soul? But I also always underestimated what exactly a Clacker was, because at first I'm like, well, automaton like C-3PO, and then later in the story I'm like, this feels more like a Terminator with the strength and power and force that these things have. So,
and
I do.
Sorry, go ahead, Pete.
I said I do like how that they're like going in with like the different types of Clackers, and how they didn't turn every Clacker into Jax, if that makes any sense. So like the thing that he could have done with the Clacker language is always basically just have Clackers yelling out, I don't want to do this to you, I'm so sorry, I want you to go free. Like they could have done that with the Centaur machines or whatever they're called. The Stenwinders. He could have done that, but instead he made the Stenwinders completely quiet. And world building wise, there's probably a reason for that, right? Because most Stenwinders are likely kept away from other Clackers a lot, so they didn't have the time to develop the language, I guess. But or they're just built different to a certain extent.
I think literally they're built different, but that makes you wonder, was that done intentionally? Were the Stemwinders kept quiet intentionally? And that also indicates, does the Clockmakers Guild know about the Clacker language?
Yeah,
they know.
I mean, Berenice does.
Yeah, Berenice
I think they do.
Yeah.
I think they do know, because like when what was her name? The head of the Clockmaker, not head,
Belle.
but Belle. Yeah, like
Belle.
from Belle's point of view, I don't think she would care if they can talk. She doesn't care if they have a soul. So I think they know.
And that brings us to, like, first of all, when like I did not think Visser was going to get caught that early. Like I did not think that he was like after he manages to, the rest of the network is completely murdered. And he manages to slip the thing to Jax. Like I thought Visser was going to keep doing his work on the inside. He's caught like in chapter 5. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess we're about to lose the POV. But then, like,
I thought he was gonna like stick it out and talk to the tortured person, but not kill her, like the reasonable person would do. But no, he kills her immediately. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I like that, you know, he's a believer in his faith, like, and he
fully, he is 100% in.
Yeah, but he struggles with like, am I doing the right thing by, you know, I'm killing this person so they don't talk. Like, is this the right thing to do? Like, should I do this? Like, am I saving her from worse things? Am I damning her to eternal damnation? I just really it was very realistic portrayal of someone struggling with these kind of decisions.
I think, Visser in general, the whole book, I think, is portrayed that way. He's just a very conflicted character, and rightly so. Like, he is dealing with, you know, events that are so beyond the scope of what his faith tells him, you know, and he's just conflicted the whole time, and even more conflicted when he thinks potentially that his own soul is gone. And I liked that portrayal a lot too. It was very interesting.
Yeah, and then that brings us to his confrontation with Anastasia Bell, which is just a fascinating conversation that could have sat there on the page and fallen flat. But their discussion of free will, one, and whether the clackers have a soul was so interesting. And, you know, you see Visser like fielding the questions from a standard, like that he's heard before, like, oh, okay, like I've heard this argument, like, oh, is my wristwatch, but that's not the same thing. And then you realize, and it took me a minute to realize that, like, Bell is not arguing that the humans have souls and clackers do not. She's saying, oh, no. Like, she's saying, I agree with you. Humans and clackers are the same. They don't have souls. Neither one of them. And I was like, that is like, I was so like, caught me by surprise that was her argument. And Visser, like, I felt the same as Visser, where he's like, wait a minute, what? Like, that's what you're saying? Because he was just arguing against, he was having a different conversation than she was.
Oh yeah,
very much.
Right. And that was such a really good like turn of conversation, right? Because from the very beginning, I was kind of like, I didn't get the impression that she was genuinely arguing with him. So I was like, she doesn't believe what she's talking about. She's just like going through the motions, just like he is, to a certain extent, but like for a different purpose. And like the turn into like, oh yeah, nobody has souls. I was just like, yeah.
And her comparing the clackers to like the wristwatch, like your watch and everything, and it was just a really good, because, you know, we've all seen the free will discussion with like we've all read that, and I thought Tregillis did something different with it here, which I really appreciated.
And he did it. Go ahead, Katie.
I was just gonna say, I appreciate how he used Bell to force, in order for Visser to stay in the conversation and be able to talk to Bell, Visser had to go beyond his faith. He couldn't just recite texts from, you know, whatever. And that, I loved that, because in so many religious conversations, you see the argument like, oh, the Bible says so, or the you know, Quran says so, or the Pope says so, whatever. And it's like, okay, well, how do you know that's true? You can't just say because it is. And Bell pushed him beyond that. And I thought that was phenomenally done. I was like,
Bell pushed him beyond saying, how do you know the clackers have souls? Or how do you know like humans have souls? And he's like, well, you know, God tells us. And she's like, okay. Yeah. We've all heard that, Visser. Right. How do you know? Like, how do you know?
Yeah.
And Visser had to like think about it. And
that was so interesting.
It was a really good discussion, a back and forth that just ended with, like brilliant but terrifying, where I'm just like, oh my gosh, you're like uneasy going to bed that night. You're like, do I have a soul? I know. Sam?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like the argument of what is it materialism? I can't remember these names but the idea that like, oh, we're just like the thing that people say, we're just meat puppets, you know, being moved around. And obviously as a Catholic, you know, Visser wouldn't believe that. And so, I agree that I thought that was, you know, a well presented argument. And, you know, now I think we need to put, everybody says R. Scott Baker is the king of the free will discussion and fantasy. Like, you know, we need some love for Ian Tregillis on that.
Tregillis, I know. It was good. The two main female characters in this book are actually really good. Like Berenice and Belle are really, like, Belle's terrifying. She's this little slight lady, And
they're both a little terrifying. Like
oh, Berenice, like I love the fact that Berenice, I was like, Berenice, run, but she was so pissed at Montmorency that she was like, it was so hard to read where she jabs him in the testicles and with the fire poker, and
still hot. That's hot.
And keeps twisting it. And she could leave, but she cuts out doesn't she cut out his eye? Like she is like,
he is crippled.
Yeah.
She is pissed that
he's gonna have nightmares about that until he dies.
I don't know how he didn't pass out.
Oh, and I think, like, guys, if you guys read it, like chapter 9, like the last chapter of part 1, where that military clacker gets free because of that garbage epoxy Montmorency left, and then showing us just how like powerful a military clacker on the loose is, like in the lab where everyone dies and then like they freak out, they trip, so they drop the epoxy grenade, and Berenice's husband Luis gets his arm cut off and she's trying to save him, and then all of these people, he killed like 30 something people, didn't it, before it was finally like before Longchamps finally gets lucky, like they bola it long enough for him to hit it in the keyhole with his diamond pick. That was so
like a Terminator.
Yeah, it was terrifying. Like showing that Berenice is, and I really liked that's Berenice's feet of clay. Like her hubris brought this on. She did not know what she was dealing with, and she thought she had it under control, and she did not.
Well, and to be fair, she might have had Montmorency not.
Yeah,
I said Frankenstein.
For sure. And I love the fact that there were consequences for that. Like so many times in fantasy books, characters are saved from the consequences of the things they've done. And I really like that dozens of people died, and she was stripped of her holdings, and the only reason she wasn't arrested is because she was Talleyrand and she had the king and her had a decent relationship. So the best that he could do is that you got to go, like exile, like boom, Talleyrand in exile. And she lost everything. She lost everything because
and that was such a big change. So going into the start of the book, we had Vizier in the capital of the Netherlands. He was there, and he was there as a spy that he could get information from people. And then we had Bernice, who is deeply connected with the French government. And after part 1, all of that's just cut off.
I did not expect that to change so fast.
This book had so many twists and turns that I didn't expect. It was so good for that. It's such a non-traditionally structured series, and it's great.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, like the Jack's plotline.
Yeah, that's she's got balls of steel.
Yeah, and so the scene with the military clacker makes me wonder too, if Lilith had been a military clacker, and maybe she had been, or Bernice had caught the military clacker and dissected it in the same way, would we feel as bad? Like, would we feel that?
No, and I would not feel nearly as bad if they dissected.
And it's interesting because we don't know Lilith's history. We don't know what she's done. We don't know who she's killed. Maybe she was a murderer too. I mean, it doesn't have to be a military clacker to be, So I think that is super interesting. Not that I'm defending Bernice's actions. It's still super messed up. But I think that little twist is pretty interesting.
Charmaine says Tregillis is good at bringing fear and pain off the page into the reader. Some of the scenes where Visser's being chased. Oh yeah, when Visser got away, before, when Visser's walking away, and then he sees a stem winder, and then he passes the stem winder, but then we gradually realize that he's being chased, and I thought he had died. I thought they killed him.
I thought he was going to get away, and
but when it showed that, I also thought he was going to get away, but then when he, when it goes to black, I was like, oh, well, I guess Visser's dead. I don't know what we're going to do with the rest of it. And then he appeared, and I'm like, okay, where are we going with him? It was terrifying. His flight from the stem winders was so terrifying.
It was going, and then the stem winder rips the side of the carriage off. Casually.
Those stem winders are
Yeah.
not playing around.
No. It was great. Like Tregillis did a very good job of balancing like the empathy that we feel for different types of clackers.
Yeah.
So that he could preserve it for future parts, like whether it's the end of it when you had soldier clackers just clamping down on jacks, you had Stenwiders the entire time. Like he was very intentional about that in the way he wrote this. That's just like super interesting to look at from like a writing structure standpoint.
I
And
think
just,
that.
like speaking.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Sam.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, speaking as this being difficult to market, like that's another thing is, by no means would somebody describe this as a grim dark book. I don't even know that you describe this as dark fantasy, really. But like the violence in it was like, geez, like I mean, he was very visceral in how it was described, and like rightly so. He's making a point, but
eye horror
definitely will make some people squeamish, especially if you're not expecting it based on the tone from earlier in the book. Yeah.
Yeah, for the tone from earlier, like the early Jax chapters is like Downton Abbey. And it's like, Jack, servitor, make sure that you move my chest and make sure none of it gets disturbed. And then I love Jax and his two other clackers like talking to each other, and it was terrifying. I thought it was terrifying when Jax screws up the metageases when the girl falls, and all of a sudden he sees his friend clackers just being like, Jax, run, because they realize that he has screwed up the metageases, which is impossible to do unless you're a rogue. And then they just start that horrific screaming that causes the humans' ears to bleed. That was so scary. And it's so interesting. Like Pete, you talked about the programming language thing, like the stuff that Jax has to keep in his head to avoid being discovered. Like he's got to like keep in mind like how everything is stacked and ordered so that he doesn't inadvertently botch it in front of another clacker and get all that called out.
And that's like after, like that's such a completely different growth and change that he has to keep in the back of his mind, or in the front of his mind, really, because it used to be that he had this immediate pain reaction to these things, and now he has to be like, okay, how much pain would I be in?
Well, it's so interesting too, because he's been under the Geas for hundreds of years,
118
and
years.
all of a sudden it's gone. And he has a hard time replicating exactly what he would do after doing this for hundreds of years, 118 years, which is crazy.
It's one of those things. It's like muscle memory. Pain memory. Because like, so I just went through a thing with my phone where I couldn't remember my phone password. Even though I've typed it in 27 million times, I had to reset my phone. And then I had another phone that I had the exact same password on, that I had to open up in order to get into it so I could reactivate and get other stuff on. I typed the password in just fine. It's the same password. But when I was thinking about it, I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember what it was.
I like, there's a line that I highlighted where Jax is like, is freedom the absence of that compulsion? Like, that's what it is for them, because they're so used to having Geas on top of Geas on top of Geas on top of Geas on top of Geas, like fighting for priority in their head, and then all of a sudden, empty silence. Like all of a sudden, there's this absence of compulsion, of these multiple compulsions that he has, and to the clackers, that's what freedom is.
No, there was like a whole paragraph there that was like super interesting. I've got it here in front of me. It's talking about free will was a vacuum, a negative space, the absence of coercion, the absence of compulsion, the absence of agony. I was like, whoa.
Oh, so good. So good.
Yeah, and I feel like that he started to go into a little bit about how terrifying freedom is a little bit, because that's one thing that I don't see people like explore a lot, because freedom, going from no freedom to a lot of freedom, is a terrifying thought. Whatever side of the spectrum you're coming from.
The end of that paragraph says, how did humans guide themselves? How did they know what to do and what not to do? How did they know when to do anything without the benefit of a Giza and Meta Giza to prioritize every single action of their waking lives. How did they order their daily existence without someone to tell them what to do, or was that the purpose of God?
Yeah.
And
we see humans when giving unfettered freedom, like when they win the lottery and they can all of a sudden do anything they want, tend to doom themselves because it's too much. Like it's too much. Like complete license, unfettered access to like nothing, no roadblocks in the way. We are not good at that. It's just too much, and that's why most people who win the lottery end up more miserable than they were before they won it.
Yeah, and this is one of the themes that I hope they continue with, of just like, okay, freedom is terrifying, and it is so much easier to not be free in a sense. And I really hope that he continues down like that philosophical line with some of these storylines, and he has the opportunity to 100%.
It's easier to not be free, but it's much more agonizing to.
But also,
go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, but that's also like the theological argument that's being made here too, of like, the Protestants with either Calvinism or some brand of Calvinism, the idea being like, actually, you don't have any free will. If there is an all-powerful God, then every decision that you make has been predetermined. You're predetermined for salvation or damnation, depending on, the whims of the Creator. If you want to take it to that nth degree.
I forgot the Protestants in this.
All Calvinists here.
Yeah, they're all Calvinists.
Yeah, which was
at least
funny,
implied.
Yeah. And so, like that's not just like a philosophical idea of like, oh, what about free? Because like that is obviously the philosophical idea explored there, but that idea is explored through the story where this is like sort of the underlying question between the theology of this conflict, because Catholics, are very much of the belief that you do have free will and you do have to freely choose God or freely choose, to go to hell at the end of your life if that's your decision. For those who join the priesthood, they have to make a commitment saying that they are doing this of their own free will. If you're compelled to do it, you can have your priesthood annulled after that. So that's what I mean when I say like it's not often that I've seen like the themes and the ideas explored like meshed so well with the setting that Tregillis chose to put this story in.
Absolutely.
Even down to things like when Vassar is killing his fellow spy to free her from the torture that she's under, and he does it by administering the Eucharist, but like a poison version of it, where the Eucharist is right, you're sharing in the death of Jesus Christ, and like that's how he kills her. I was like, oh, that's twisted. That's really like Tregillis isn't just like, oh, I watched, I went to Sunday school a couple of times, and that's like he seemed to really know his stuff when it came to a lot of the beliefs that he was representing, which was interesting.
Yeah, it was awesome. I think, and he did really good job, especially like going back to like the conversation with Anastasia Bell, of suiting the arguments for the time period, like the world building behind it. Like, so Anastasia Bell being, a bit of, an atheist, she wasn't throwing out anything with like Charles Darwin or anything like that.
Yeah, and I agree. I appreciate
he didn't modernize the arguments.
Yeah, there's no modern self-insertion, like 2020, internet argument in there. Like all of the discussions were time period appropriate, which I thought was good. I agree, Pete.
And we're well-rounded. We got to see multiple sides of the same coin. So it didn't feel like, some books you read and like the main character, whatever, is very obviously the author's voice box. It's very obviously. I didn't feel that way about this. I felt that Tregillis was exploring these ideas in their entirety from more than one side. And I appreciated that.
Yeah, I think all of us would be hard-pressed to figure out where Tregillis lands in his metaphysical arguments. Like I don't know what his thoughts are, and it's often quite clear. Oh really? Yeah. Book two is good so far. I will let you know that it's good. I am greatly enjoying it so far. Longchamps is the first POV. Like he's the first POV of chapter 1. So I like Longchamps. I like the fact that he knits sweaters for orphans.
I had
that
to
was
read
so
that once or
cute.
twice. I'm like, wait, the just him pulling out his knitting needles. I'm like, I didn't jump to another character randomly. This is
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was great.
Also, like the end where Visser has assassinated the Pope. Like
I'm
pretty
so
insane.
sad we didn't get that scene.
I know, but like talk about
I know that was bizarre.
like Tregillis is going for it. He's like,
Yeah.
he's like, look,
I would have thought the assassination of the Pope would have happened in like book 3. Like, no, it is all on
he
the
got
table
the Pope
right
already.
now.
And
Yeah.
so, and I think it's just because I don't think that the Pope and the Church over here in the New World is as important to the story as is Marseille in the West.
Mhm.
So it would be different if he had killed Sebastian 6 or Sebastian 9 or Sebastian 2, whatever the king's name is. It would be different if he killed the king off page. I think the king is the bigger get, at least for the story.
Right.
It'll be really interesting, I think, to see if France is still a country at the end of these 3 books.
Seriously, and
yeah.
Thinking about Visser, like how must Visser be dealing with the fact that he killed the head of his church?
I loved the scene. I loved the scene right there where it said it had just happened and he's walking through the services like just crying, and everyone thinks he has grief for the Pope, but he does, and so he just like kind of fits right in. And I was like, man, that was because he's just agonizing in pain over that.
Yeah, Visser, I think, can express I think it's more obvious outwardly that Visser is resisting the Metageases more than the Clackers. Like the Clackers just make noise, which the humans are like, okay, well, Clackers are making noise or whatever. But like, if you compare the two, like that's what the Clackers are doing too. They're just doing it in a different way. Like they can't express the same way that humans can. So Visser, looking at Visser, how the Geases are affecting him, like that's what's happening to the Clackers too.
Yeah.
It's just
but the Clackers are used to it. The Clackers have been doing it for over 100 years.
And the Clackers have more of a way to express it, I feel like. Like we can't turn the springs in our body. We don't have a tension mechanism in our body, but the Clackers do, so they have a little bit more room, I think, to express it. And so Visser just looks like a psychopath.
I'd rather not, Charmaine. I'd rather not talk about the eye gore.
The Clacker
eye stuff.
And the Clackers don't know any better as well. Like they don't know the joys of being able to choose your own path.
Yeah. I did not enjoy every time it said the sucking sound that happened when Berenice popped the eye in, like
Do we know if Ian Tregillis has a best friend or indeed only has one eye himself?
That was really descriptive. Like it was...
Well, let me ask you this. Do we think there is a Queen Mab? The legendary free clacker of the North or whatever in the New World. Do we think that exists, or is that kind of like an urban legend? Because what we don't have is the Underground Railroad anymore. Or I don't know what the Dutch word is. The OS.
Right.
We do not have that anymore. But
I do not think so. I think that Jax is going to have to build it himself.
Interesting.
Like my prediction for the end of the series, it's not going to be French versus Dutch. It's going to be Clackers versus French versus Dutch.
You think the Clackers are going after the humans?
Yeah.
The French are not their friends.
I also think that all the Clackers are somehow by the end of book 3 going to end up mostly free, and they're going to wage war on humanity. That's also where I think this is going.
I hope that we get how that's the Pineal Stone grants free will. Like,
yes, I was wondering, like, what do we think that thing is exactly? Because supposedly it's just a concave or a convex lens.
But it's got like a matching one though.
Right. So one of them's concave, one of them's convex, and the partner one is in the head of all the.
And so something about the thing it connects to frees them. And
Yeah.
I would love to know. I would love to know how. So I hope we figure that out.
It has something to do with some sort of
Well,
like it's. I
I'm
think
assuming
there's some sort of alchemical command on it,
What,
like going
Sam?
with the programming.
Well, I'm assuming it has something to do with the alchemy that like has them have a soul in the first place, you know. So
Caroline. No,
Yes!
no, I do not hope that at all. It's oh man. What about the clacker ships? Like
That was so cool.
Yeah, like the airship. Like that,
I love that perspective of just like
that
the clacker ship didn't know how to like talk.
He was excited too. I mean, he was ready to go.
before he went down in a ball of fire.
So
Poor
sad.
guy.
I will bring death to them. Oh wait, no, sadness.
Yeah, that was wild.
And then like that entire scene, I really loved him. Like, oh yeah, it isn't just like they shoot one shot and he goes on fire. He actually went into like the structure of it and everything like that.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a really cool like
gas bladders and stuff.
I think
Yeah.
my favorite part of that scene was I could tell that Tregillis is a physicist by the way that he wrote this, because when Jax jumped into the river, where he had been really hot near all the hydrogen gas, he jumped into the river and it quenched his metals in his body. As all of a sudden he wasn't able to operate. That would absolutely happen. That's so real.
Awesome.
That's how metals work. And I love that. I was geeking out. I was like sitting in my chair, like,
so cool. Having someone who understands the science, like,
yeah,
really
I thought
cool.
it was so cool.
So we're what a good book. And I always like after these discussions, they always like make me like things even more. Like it was just it was really good. I can't wait to see where it goes. Anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to mention, Sam, and then Pete, and then Katie?
I will say, if you don't mind me reading a brief passage here,
No,
go ahead.
I think one of my favorite scenes was when Visser is under, a geese. I think that's how you said it, right?
Yeah.
And like one part of the geese has been that he's like forbidden to like tell anybody that he's influenced. And what was it that he's forbidden to go and ask for absolution from other people now that he's back in Canada. And so he has this bit where he runs to the church and he's desperately trying to get help. And it goes like this. Visser's throat spasmed. He coughed. I need the tip of his stuttering tongue threw itself between his teeth and he tasted new blood. I need absolution, he thought. I need to feel the Lord's grace once more. I need to know that what has been done to me was not a rending of my immortal soul, but a corruption of the flesh. I need to know that spirit and free will are not one and the same. I need to know that the Lord will receive me. A flare of pain dropped him onto his knees. Agony racked Visser's body from toes to ears. He groaned, writhed beside the font. The vicar retreated another step. I need to know the Lord and King will forgive me for the weakness of my flesh, for abandoning this via dolorosa, and not martyring myself unto the torments embedded in my mind and body by the guild. The pain would surely kill him if it persisted, but Visser's ability to resist would break first. He was too weak for martyrdom. Prayer, said Visser. I need prayers. And then, obviously, he goes, the vicar approaches him, and then it says that Visser's shriek was the death cry of a wounded beast, and then he flees out into the street. And that's kind of what I was referring to earlier when I said that parts of Visser's plotline felt like something out of a possession story of some other will imposing itself upon him. And like it's not creepy in the sense of like, oh, I'm horrified by horror, but it was very unnerving. It was very eerie in that sense. And Tregillis's use of specific language to make you feel that way, of like him writhing around on the ground there, and some of that striking imagery I felt like was very effective in that scene.
Yeah. Like Tregillis, I agree. Sorry, the baby was right over there. No one's saying Gesh except the narrator. He does not actually say it. He's changed the way he's pronounced it in the second book. Narrator. He doesn't pronounce it Gesh.
No kidding.
I think they told him stop that. Like I know that's how it's pronounced, but no one wants to hear it. Stop doing it. It is eerie, like the lack of free will that is imposed on Visser through like the alteration of his brain. It's so disturbing.
They just like put a little cap on top of the free will part of the brain, basically.
Yeah. Tied it up.
Yeah.
So, Sam, we'll start with you.
All these people out here
finish.
wanting Neuralink.
I do not. Thank you.
No.
Gotta watch out.
What are your predictions for book 2 or the rest of the series? Like, what kind of predictions do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think Katie mentioned like Jack's kind of becoming a leader of some sort of clacker uprising. I think that makes sense. Of the plots in this book, I felt like his was the one where it was like, oh yeah, that like not like, oh, I predicted it, but it was the one where it's like, okay, this is the most conventional, straightforward as far as the trajectory goes. But the two others with Visser and then Berenice, I had no idea where those went. So I guess I can't really say. I don't feel like Visser's is gonna end happily though. It might, but I feel like his is. I mean, I suppose there's a world in which he could get his free will back, but I don't see him being happy even after that, just with the immense amount of guilt. I mean, you even saw that earlier when he mercy killed his fellow spy, and the next paragraph or the next like chapter opening about him calls him like the dung covered murderer, you know, as he was leaving the cell, and like that's how he perceives himself. So I don't see Visser being happy after all that's happened to him.
Arian says the inner monologues were written so well. Also, when Berenice tried to save her grief of Louis's death later, again, she's single-minded. Like she is leaving her husband, but I mean, she doesn't have time. Like she doesn't have time right now. She got to deal with it later, because she won't be able to continue if she sits there and mourns Louis. Because we end the book with Berenice is in custody because she did not run because she had to cut out Montmorency's eye and keep jabbing him in the junk with a hot poker. And then Visser has killed the Pope and is on his way to stand in the petitioner's line to go see the king. So, you know.
And then Jax is a salamander.
Oh. The whole scene at the end, like the freaking let's just become like a Michael Bay like action movie in the forest.
Yeah, that was wild.
Oh my gosh, where everything.
How did we not talk about that at this point?
I don't know. How do we miss that? So let's talk about that before we go. Like just like the concentric circles, like all the gold like circles, like the gyroscope thing, and I like that Jax doesn't like the fact that he thinks about like, oh no, this lab's gonna blow up, and that poor engineer that I shoved in a closet, like that guy's gonna die, and like Jax didn't want that, but like it's also not his fault that everyone lost their minds and tried to get him, and he's like jumping over cauldrons. That would just be a cool scene to watch, like, and then everything blows up, like. Well,
and somehow Jax survives.
Yeah. I guess
salamander from the ashes.
I guess the Dutch are going to be pissed.
Did he have Visser's eyeglass piece thing on him when I can't remember?
No, he gave it to Berenice. Berenice has it before he went into.
But didn't he use it on?
Yeah, no, he had it. He had it on him.
He used it on what's his name?
Yeah. I thought he gave it to Berenice.
No, he did, but then
because they searched Berenice and didn't find it.
He used it on his friend who was in the basement getting revamped with the new chemicals to repel the epoxy. What was his name? I don't remember, but he freed him, and then that guy died to the stem winder.
Yeah, it really kind of like I think that scene was kind of like the only time where I was kind of like, bro, why don't you just go around to all the other clackers and start freeing them? Literally,
right?
This entire
because
scene.
Eventually, someone will notice, and there are a lot of clackers there.
But that's
like,
but what are they gonna do? Like, if you've got that many free clackers, like.
Well, the problem is there's stem winders down there, and we have no idea.
Why didn't you use it on at least one stem winder?
Because we don't know if it works, and you have one try. You have one try, and if it doesn't work, dead.
Yeah,
I think that's one of my predictions for. I think book 2. I think we're gonna see a stem winder that gets free somehow.
Yeah, aren't there two?
Two what?
Little stones that.
No, I think there's only one.
Yeah, there's only one that was in the microscope to start with.
Right. And then we see the other pieces that are in the clackers' heads that are like a complement to it, but there's never another Dwyer. I don't know how you say that.
Dwight Schrute? What?
Not Dwight Schrute. Oh,
yeah.
Well, the problem is Dwyer's the one that screws it up.
Yeah.
Like
Jack's run.
Fine, if not for stupid Dwyer down there. Stupid Dwyer.
I mean, if it worked on the airship, why wouldn't it work on a Stemwinder? You know, like
no idea.
Maybe all worker servers.
Why don't the Stemwinders talk?
Exactly. They're so just like what's going on.
The Stemwinders not talking is really interesting to me because that either implies a significant design change, which obviously there was, but was it intentional is the question. Do the Stemwinders not talk intentionally? Because if they don't, that implies that the Clockmakers Guild knows about the sentience of the clackers and just doesn't care.
Yeah. Wild.
Well, and I wonder if some, maybe the Stemwinders, or if there's some form of like automaton that genuinely doesn't have souls like, say, Jax or some of the other ones do. If there's a distinction there, or if they all just do.
I think another thing that'll be interesting that I think maybe is gonna, I feel like we're gonna get a parallel between Bernice and Visser, because the biggest difference between humans becoming clackers and clackers themselves is that humans had arguably, wherever you stand on the issue, humans have sentience and free will before they are imposed to that the Gias, whereas mechanicals don't. They are made for this purpose. They are made this way. And so I will be super curious to see, like, Visser is, I hate to say he's a pushover, but he's not as strong of mind as Bernice is. So I wonder if we will see any difference in how Bernice fights the Gias as we move on, or if she's able to ignore some of it, or if she's able to eventually break it. I don't know. I think it'll be interesting.
Here, this is for everybody. Hold on. The other injuries were for Luis, but this is for me, she said. Because you know what, Your Grace? I don't like you either. Then she shoved the knife into his eye. It turned the former Duke Montmorency. It turned out the former Duke Montmorency hadn't lost the ability to scream after all. Berenice was still scraping the blade around his orbit and around and around and around, dulling it against the bone when the Stemwinders found her. Christina's looking at me with a face. She did not enjoy that passage.
That's nasty.
Yeah.
So it's.
But that's still not the same piece. I think the piece that Visser had was like the complement to the piece that was inside the soldier, right? Like they're not the same.
It transformed. They made a second one when they pressed it against.
So where's the first one?
Jax has one and Berenice has one.
Oh, okay.
That's why I thought Berenice had one, and that's.
Does Berenice have one in her eye?
No, she has her eye in her eye, but she has hers.
I know, but where did she? Okay.
Remember, she carries her eye.
Yeah, because I thought they didn't find it when they searched her.
Yeah. Oh, then maybe she put it in her eye. I don't know.
Well, I thought it was kind of a tense scene where like they started to search her, but maybe didn't get her completely, nude.
But then they knocked her out.
Yeah. I
feel like they would have found it then. So we'll see in book 2.
No.
We'll find out.
So,
Charmaine, the Stemwinders being silent was mentioned from only Jax's POV, I'm pretty sure. So I don't think that it was like he talks about how they are mute, but it's never mentioned whether the clockmakers made them that way intentionally or not. It's just that they are. I thought. Yeah, the Igor.
Do we need to hear the I paragraph again? Did y'all get it? Do I need to read it again? Christina said no. All right. Okay. Christina heard it the first time. Still very gross. All right, Pete, what do you think's going to happen?
What I said about like the three-way war. I really think that's going to happen. I think next book specifically, we're going to have Jax kind of building his own underground railroad. I definitely think that Bernice is not going to get like the free will lobotomy. I think that he's going to pull her out of it, or the fact that if she might have it in her eye, so she can't get the lobotomy, and they're going to be like, why can't? Anyways, because they don't know she has it. She's going to be able to break out of that pretty easily if she manages to maintain possession of that. But Vizier is probably going to kill himself.
Can he? Will the Geas allow it?
You can get really creative with.
I don't think he can. Like, I physically don't think he could like walk off a cliff. Like, I think the Geas would stop.
No, but he's gonna do it.
Katie, what are some of your predictions?
I definitely agree with Pete on the three-way war, but I think that's more of like I think that's going to be like book 3. Like, I think the three-way war is going to be book 3. I think we're going to see a Stemwinder freed in book 2, and I think that is going to change the way that we think about some of the mechanicals and their designs, and maybe get some more insight into the way the guild works itself. Which I think will be interesting.
Talk.
Yeah, I think that they're going to try to do the surgery on Bernice, but I think that something is going to happen. Like, it's not, even if she does get the piece in her head, like, something's going to go wrong, but something weird is going to happen there. She's going to throw things off the rails as she always does. And I think Jax will continue to try and build an army, but I don't think he's going to have the personality for it. I think that he's going to have to enlist some help in terms of actually having the war leader fierce. He's too kind for this.
Well,
so I think he's
Longchamp is a POV in this. I mean, he's the POV of the first chapter. What do you think the Longchamp storyline is going to be?
He is going to knit a sweater for Jax specifically.
Ha! Here. Oh, the Stemwinders dragged their safe distance from.
I'm not saying I believe this.
Though not before they found the pouch under her blouse and the glassy marble hidden there.
So they did find it.
It just says glassy marble. That could have been an eye. I mean, she could have.
It is possible.
Yeah, so that goes into my theory that she put the thing in her eye.
And they found her eye in the.
They found her eye, and she has the thingamajigger concealed in her face.
But either way, they did find her hiding space. I knew it wasn't when they first searched her. Yeah. I knew it wasn't when they first got her. But.
So we will see.
Right, because the switcheroo makes sense because plot wise, it makes sense why Tregillis has her be one-eyed then, for the later half of the book.
That would make sense. That would make sense.
So she has to literally look into the. So she's gonna turn into a reverse Men in Black, takes off her sunglasses and looks into the eyes of this.
Yeah.
It's like
I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm about halfway, and so I have some answers and some questions. So we'll see.
Good poker face, Alan.
Yeah, I do not like giving stuff away. I don't That's why I'm just listening, and it's all stuff that I completely thought also. So we'll see.
I feel like Longchamp is a POV because we still need somebody on the inside of the fridge.
Yeah, we need somebody in Marseille.
We need somebody, and so I feel like that's kind of what I feel. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and also what you let's look at the elephant in the room. The Duchess forge in the New World has exploded.
War.
War. Were I the Dutch, I would probably blame the French. So
100%.
So so we'll see. But I know if I were the Dutch, I would be like, interesting. I think the French just blew up our forge. All right, let's kill them all. Let's do it. So.
Military clackers to the New World.
Oh my lord! Those military clackers are hardcore. I literally don't even know if there's war, how the French are going to survive. Look
how
at the trouble they had with one military clacker.
Well, the fact is, Jax is now, what's it called? A mole in the army.
That's right.
He's marching with the Dutch right now. That's right.
Yep. So
I forgot.
Wait, hold on. So if the French live in Canada, doesn't this mean that Tregillis is doing Blame Canada? Like in South Park?
He is. Look, he's blaming Quebec, which is the worst part of Canada because there's so many French people there. That's right. I'm sticking to my guns. Sorry for alienating the French, all my French viewers. But Quebec, come on, y'all know Quebec is the worst. So, at any rate, guys, thank you so much for joining. Hope we can. Hope you guys will find time to read the second one this month, so we can do it again. Because I'm pumped. I'm pumped to talk about it. I can't wait to see where it goes because we got 2 more books. So, So thank you guys in the chat for reading it with us. Like started the year off. Started the year off right. Successful read along. Let's do it.
Yep. Got to start off with Feb Rising.
Yes, and I am hoping that all the other books are just as good and that we have a good ending because I'm over trilogies not sticking the landing. It'll irritate me. So
I feel like he's gonna do it. I feel like he's got it.
Wait, one last question. Yeah. How many people are gonna lose their eyes, specifically lose their eyes before the series is out?
Hopefully 0 more. 0.
I feel like we're gonna have at least 1 more.
I'm gonna price this right you. I'm gonna do at least 2 more.
Stop, y'all stop. Anyway, all right. So thank you guys. Thanks, chat, for joining us.
One's gonna be intentional, doing it to themselves. Anyway, sorry,
Pete. All right,
it's gonna be Visser.
Guys, if Pete interrupts me again, I'm just gonna end the stream. So y'all join me. Y'all join us beginning of March where we discuss the Rising. What's book 3 called? The
Liberation. Yeah.
Liberation? Well,
which reeks of a 3-person war, 3-party war to me.
Exactly.
Or what Caroline said, the extinction of humankind. Which
exactly.
is terrible. All right. We'll see you guys later. Please check out Pete and Sam's channels and maybe mine. But we'll see you guys later. All right.